means. I can't deal with it. I'm hearing the Ochan. Hey everybody, it's Tuesday. And on Tuesday, we're fortunate enough to be joined by our good friend, brother, third Mike, Ryan Cristian, Last American Vagabond. How's it going, my friend?
I just realized my mic was disconnected. Can you guys hear me? It looks like it might be low.
It is very a little low.
It is. I'll mess with it here. Now I don't know if you're talking about me or not, but I'm not that cool. I had a really low key, normal day for my birthday. There's just a lot going on in the personal side of the world. It's so hard when there's so much going on. And I've got I do even the days when I don't do my show, I do interviews and so on. And I get so backed up when I can't get the stuff out. It drives me bananas. So I've got 2 interviews to put out today and I got to do my show. It just kills me. But you guys know there's just this endless amount of nonsense going on today. And
absolutely. It's our birthday month. So,
if my do something about that.
Yeah. If circumstance hadn't put it in a position to where Ryan Long was playing Vegas that specific weekend, I would have left the house long enough to walk the dog and walk around the desert with the kids a little bit and come back. Seriously, we were binge watching Attack on Titan and that was,
I did catch the new D&D movie, which I actually enjoyed.
Did you?
For the other geeks out there like myself that grew up playing these games, it was good. I was, the game these days. You go, okay, is this going to be completely just broken and bent with woke nonsense that makes no sense for the plot? To shoehorn in gay relationship, which things exist, but today it's almost it's at the expense of the plot and the movie that you see a lot of this stuff shoehorned in. And it wasn't I'm sure somebody out there will have comments about something. I thought overall everything was, I felt like they reflected and recognized what their audience actually is. Like the Bud Light conversation today. It's like, you're making choices that are counterintuitive. Your audience, it just doesn't make sense.
Do we actually have confirmation from Bud Light?
As far as I can tell, that's legit. I mean, the faces on the cans and the promotional stuff going around.
Okay, because Adam Curry swears up and down that Bud Light did this last year too, where they had a brand ambassador contest. And anybody they were trying to incorporate AI, and anybody on the internet could put out Bud Light brand ambassador content, and then they would select a winner.
April Fools.
Could be. Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't either. Go ahead.
I don't know, but yeah, either way, it's certainly captured the attention of a lot of people.
Well, I just saw a video from Kid Rock, I think this morning, where he was shooting a bunch of Bud Light with his AK, and it's like this, and it's just so whether or not it was fake, it's too late now. It's gone all the way around the world.
Once Kid Rock pulls out the AK, that's when you know. That's when it's become a cultural meme.
Right. But I know at the very least, what's his name has leaned into it. I'm just reading about it, but he's got multiple videos, where she, I guess, is, I forget, my intention these days is to make sure that I address the way that I believe that their biology is, but I don't even know these days. I'm like, was that a man that became a woman, or a woman became a man? I'm like, I don't even know. But if it's a woman that is a man, it's confusing, isn't it? I try to at least understand it. I'm not going to be bent into doing what they say I'm supposed to, but it's like,
do we use the pronoun what they started as, or what they're finishing as?
It's supposed to be finishing as.
You could use their own language against them, and you could be like, okay, now I'm going to take off my content creator hat and I'm going to put on my archaeologist hat. And when I look at you, your pelvis says, but I mean, you could fuck with them like that, because I can't tell you how just personally irksome that particular phrase, I'm going to take off this hat and put on this hat. I've heard grown adults say that to other grown adults. I'm not even making that up. And that's one of those things where you just want to scratch the record and be like, okay,
it sounds like KGP talking to the White House press briefing. That's how she speaks to them. Like, okay, guys, let's bring it down. Like, it just, it's really ridiculous. Like that, that I don't know how to describe it right. I don't think she's ever been a teacher. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but it's like the way she addresses it is just so demeaning.
It is classroom condescension.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. And I think that's something that they feed off in academia, and you get this almost a points reward system for being able to master the language and phraseology.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what? It's so weird.
Yeah,
it is.
I do. I want to, before we get past that first kind of riff back there, I think it's important to point out, that like I say this every time we talk about this. I know at least 2 people in our TLAV community that are trans. And and they have no issue with the whole, you have to call me this or you have to say that. And so when we say those points, people will take that as like an argument against the entire, which we're not that stupid. We don't make broad grasping statements about entire groups of people, regardless of whether we agree with them, because, we have integrity and intelligence. But, the point is that it's interesting how this whole right thing, like I am actually really happy to see a lot of people in the right community, whatever that even means today, who are going, guys, you're being ridiculous, like pointing at the Posobics and all the rest and going, what you're doing is the same as what they're doing in reverse. I'm like, thank God people are finally seeing that. And that's even if you may agree with the point, you're still able to stand back and recognize in dishonest, hypocritical stance, Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there's people that watch this show and Slow News Day that are trans. I know that there's people who watch this. There's people who watch Blunt Force Wisdom that are like twinkle toes, sparkle farts gay. And we fucking love like it's all good, dude. Like nobody gives a shit. It really is a content of character sort of thing. And so we try as hard as possible to, like, if we do anything even in the realm of broad brush painting, it's clearly jokes. You know what I mean? And it's clearly to underscore a larger point that it's absolutely ridiculous for people to be trying to because we do know for a fact that there's a number of people in that community that are like, oh man, really?
Yeah. Well, it's the same point you can make anywhere. I mean, there's an entire, you could stand back and literally point at pretty much every politicized movement, and you'll find the focal point of the movement going, that's not me. That's ridiculous. And, it is, who knows if it's majority or not, but Black Lives Matter. I mean, you pointed all this stuff. You've got people out there, prominent pundits and so on, that are just like, you don't represent me. You don't get to stand there and say, I need this or I need that, and it's now everything's flipping around, the same thing we see today where it's, it's this weird, it's like, it's the division tactic at its core, right? Because there are people who truly want equality and truly want there to be some, fairness, whatever that means in this, the childlike view of the world. But there's also people who want to just go, no, I want to stand on your neck now. Now it's my turn. And it's like, whoa, that's not, equality.
That's what we were talking about at the top of the show, where and it is the focal point. It's intended and directed where it's all politics by vengeance or legislation by vengeance, or everything's being done. Oh, like fuck amnesty and all that kind of it's the same mentality. It really is. And it's gotta, I don't know, you have to be able to show it that it's pervasive as a tool of narrative management. But if you focus on it, then it becomes one of those things where, like, okay, well, at what point are you now contributing to it as opposed to observing and comment, and it's like, dude, that's the line that we kind of walk when it comes to, like, even, playing clips and talking about, specific things on the show and stuff like that. How much attention do we really want to feed into what is clearly a narrative management operation when there's a lot of other things that are going on?
I start to think about, what do they want us to think? What do the majority of people really think? And what do we think as a community? What's really going on, and I often look at what Donald Trump is able to get away with from his own base that they don't even hold him accountable for. He's a vaccine salesman. He sold the Johnson & Johnson shot. He brought the family up there. He's pushed it. You did this. This was you. Don't let them take it away from you. And yet he's still not come out and say, guys, I was wrong. We should have never done this. I was under pressure. We should have never locked down. He's never made an apology for that. He still kind of stood on his position that Operation Warp Speed was one of the greatest things he's ever done. And the Julian Assange situation, which he never, pardoned, which a lot of conservatives nowadays, I mean, they're trying to rewrite history and try to say that Trump was always wanting to pardon him, but he couldn't because of the issues he had with his own, congressional bodies, his own party, that they were going to impeach him and they wouldn't let him run again. But to act as if he didn't, that Julian Assange didn't come into custody during his presidency. So what else can he get away with? And if they put him back in power, right? What can Trump get away with that his base will just excuse and not hold him accountable for? A war with China? I mean, he's got him on board for that already. So that's what I'm thinking is that, and Steve has mentioned this before. It's like, well, they got to give the power, the party with the guns back power first before they can go completely through with the Great Reset. And once they do that, and Steve, maybe you can explain your reasons why they have to give, because I don't want to do it any injustice about why they have to give the party back that have the guns power back first.
Before we get, I just want to make a quick point to what you said, though. You touched on something interesting, though, is this is something, and obviously the point you made is the left does the same thing, right? Obviously, it's the same game. Biden can do no wrong, right? But the interesting point you made there is this is what we fall for in the two-party illusion, right? Is that, so what you just said there is, oh, well, the arguments made, which nobody can prove, that Trump would have, but he couldn't, because if he did, they wouldn't have let him run again. Okay, so what you're really arguing is the truth. What's the right thing to do is less important than just making sure he gets another chance to at least try to do the right thing. Like, that's ridiculous. That means politics and his presence is more important than actually bringing Assange out of prison or actually solving this or actually doing that. It's all about the end, the means justify the end. Like it's the way it's broken logic. Let's put it that way. So that's an interesting point. But go ahead, Steve, whatever you're going to break down for us.
Okay.
Guns,
no, I mean, it seems, or at least cyclically, whenever you've got a society like pushed to a point to where you've ratcheted up a drug problem and a race war and let's see what else, what was it fucking 20 years ago, like, oh yeah, we hated Muslims, there was all this kind of shit going on. If you really wanted to kick it into overdrive, all you would have had to do is put John Kerry in 2004 and be like, I'm going to take those guns. And you would have got absolutely everything that you were pushing towards with the, ratcheting up racial tensions, try to break people. It was right before the financial crash. You had just suckered a bunch of people into all of those subprime mortgages. Within a 4-year period, you really could have put the entire country into constructed civil upheaval. You really could have. It was primed for it by the time Obama got into office. What he did was take out the entire anti-war movement, the entire activist movement. He cracked heads during Occupy, took away any concept of decentralized movements in terms of specifically targeting the institutions that, at least on the surface and a few steps back, are responsible for the problems. They were going to the banks. They were going out in front of like defense contractors' buildings and shit like that. They weren't going to a freaking courthouse. You know what I mean? They weren't going to some political buildings. They were going to the institutions that actually had some sort of say-so in what happened. And so that was completely shit canned. And
that's why I think it was driven to the ground. Like they ended up in the parks with all the fair stuff, and it wasn't real anymore. It's like, would you agree with that? That it was
absolutely, yeah, without a doubt. And so, and even when they did start going to government buildings and shit like that, and just occupying, like trying to do like occupying city halls and in front of that and stuff like that, it was making a point about all of the other institutions respond, at least initially, until it got completely squashed and co-opted. And then the cops showed up and tested out all their neatest toys that they got from the IDF on us. And
yeah,
that kind of shit. It was
another interesting overlap, though, is that, you know, you could see, at least it felt like this effort was to make them look dumb. Right. Like, so not necessarily stop them, but just make sure, as long as you can make the rest of the world go, look at these children that have no idea what they're trying to accomplish. You know, politics, that's the way you get stuff done. That was kind of the message, right? Like, they don't even know what their message every time on corporate media was, what do you want? And framing them as if they didn't know what they wanted from what they were doing. That wasn't really the truth. And then you can go to January 6th or further, and you realize, okay, they realize that doesn't work. People saw through the effort, so we need to frame them as criminals, as violent, instead of just incompetent, uninformed children. You know, maybe that's the case, maybe not, but I think that's an interesting transition, right? Because January 6th, they could have just been like, oh, look at these guys that have no idea what they're doing. That wouldn't have worked. It didn't work then. I think they learned that lesson.
Well, and I mean, they intentionally found the most disjointed and disconnected people in the crowd that they could put on camera or ask those questions to, or they found the people that were inserted there by anywhere from the NYPD to the FBI
and the flag,
or whoever.
Right, Steve? Make sure you focus on that one. I think there was one. What flag is the South flag? The Confederate flag. We saw one at the ellipse and one at the, I was about to call it the Dukes of Hazzard flag. The one at the Confederate, one at the Capitol. They made sure they always focused on that one. And it was almost like that person.
Well, and if you would have asked anybody, really, if you would have grabbed like a different random and Occupy and been like, why are you here? They would have been like, well, I'm here because I think we need to hang all of the bankers and destroy the global financial cartel that has been strangling the life out of not just us, but everyone else on the planet for decades, if not centuries. Thanks. You know, and I mean, and they would have been like, oh,
right.
Let's ask this other person then, you know, but I mean, the vast majority of the people kind of knew what they were there for. And
that's why they find the ones that look stupid and make that the center point, you know?
But then my overriding kind of, observation on this is in the same way that you really kind of need to have a Democrat in the White House to pass the good Republican legislation like NAFTA or like the Patriot Act, or not Patriot Act, but the crime bill. Sorry, because they were trying to push a lot of the tenets of the crime bill under George H.W. Bush too. That didn't get to work out. And then Joe Biden in 95 writes the counterterrorism bill, but Bill Clinton's in the White House, so you can't racially profile like that. So you got to wait till George Bush. In the White House, you can change the name of it to the Patriot Act and pass that because it's a patriot. You can do that. We're under attack. There's Donald Trump getting in 2016 and the Rona hitting. If Hillary Clinton would have been in the White House and she would have ordered lockdowns and she would have said, oh, no, you can only buy stuff at Walmart. You can't buy seeds from a local grocery store. Oh, by the way, ammunition is going to triple, like all of these things that they did successfully under Donald Trump, all of the immunity to the pharmaceutical companies, all of, every single mandate, all of that shit that would, I do think, have been met with more armed resistance from the right, at least in terms of demonstrations, if not open provocation to violence.
That's a point that doesn't get enough conversation today. Like, I mean, obviously can't say we know this for sure, but think about the logic there. And it's this one example of it. Clinton, Trump makes it very obvious, but you're right. This is something that's always played, the teeter-totter where it goes back and forth, but what's interesting is it's obvious to see that the Trump supporters, if Clinton was in office, would have been, I mean, they were chomping at the bit during Obama. Like the joke we make, one thing, like just a slight movement, and they were screaming martial law, and rightly so, but then if Clinton was in power, the lockdowns, the Defense Production Act, I mean, every little thing would have been it's amazing that it wasn't under Trump because they felt like, oh, well, he's going to do the right thing. It's like, it's crazy, but you're right. This is how they play the game. The two-party
Defense Production Act,
see through it.
The Defense Production Act and the CARES Act alone is as much socialism as the United States has seen since FDR. And the entire right was like, yeah, no, it's cool.
But see, I would take the word communism even out of it, but you make a good point.
I know, but small s socialism in terms of, this is a reallocation, redistribution
the
of wealth.
corporations have been getting a form of socialism bailed out by the state for so long, and we get no socialism, we get capitalism.
Yeah, but it's not even that, guys. I mean, think the way it's fascism, right? You're talking about corporations taking money, taking money and funneling it. Like, so the idea that the socialist point's good to make, to have a Republican go, oh, yeah, we've been screaming about it and then didn't care when it happened when certain people were in power. But it's more so about, that's why I try to dispute, like, or put aside the communism, democracy, socialism. It's government, guys. It always centralizes at the top. Look at history. We just have people in power who like to make a hyper focus on certain parts of history and ignore the other ones, and paint flower pictures around the things they don't want you to look at that happened through the versions of their kind of government. But I think it's incredible to see that it always ends up that way, and to what you're pointing at, it's making sure that they don't focus on the things they were calling out on the other side. I mean, the two-party paradigm is going to be the end of us. I think we have to see that. I mean, it's everywhere. Like, if you go talk online right now on Twitter.
I think you have it best, the two-party illusion, right? Because I remember why I once registered for the Democratic Party. It was during the Iraq War. It was when they were just, preemptive attacks. They were going crazy, and I thought that I had to join the Democrat Party to stop the Republican Party's war. It turned into the Iraq War, turned into Bush's war, and that's when they lost a lot of momentum, as far as the movement in the streets, because then it became a two-party illusion battle. And I thought the Republicans were, so I did buy into the whole, this is the lesser of two evils because this party's just crazy. And now we saw over the last several years, oh my God, the Democrats, they were just batshit crazy. It's a clown car, and it's meant to be that way. And eventually your party or your team that you think you're part of is going to come out of that clown car no matter what. So, you know what I'm saying? And the Republicans are back. They're back now. Every single day I get to tell them, shut the fuck up. It was a while that it was just the Democrats were making such asses of themselves. But the Republicans are back, especially with the Restrict Act, especially with this attitude towards China. They are back, baby.
Yeah, so, but I mean, see, I would agree with that from the way it's being presented. But I think what we're really getting at is that they never left. They never went anywhere. They're both ridiculous. They're both crazy, and they're both constantly doing it. It's one, like, this is the point I make about, like, moments ago in the context of how this crazy cycle goes. But, the evangelical right was framed kind of like in the conversation of the mainstream media as the crazy, ridiculous, whatever. And now the left is doing that. And it's just my question is what people will do when that cycle flips yet again. What happens when it goes the other way? It's frustrating.
Yep. I agree. I mean, when I say they're back, I mean, it's their turn now to be the crazy ones. So,
I see what you mean. Yeah, you're right. Well, so that's so what happens when that happens, right? What happens when the right swings back around and starts being, you always have the core that kind of follows mindlessly no matter what they do, you can't really beat that. But there's this middle ground of the country. And it's, what stops us from recognizing the hamster wheel? You know what I mean? Because I know there's this group in the middle that clearly sees the game, but yet still they get swayed by some argument back and forth. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everybody sees it and we're still buying the lie. I don't know.
What I think a lot of it is that you get a window right after an election where people kind of like come back into reality. It's like coming back. It's like people who go to a fish show and they get really high in the parking lot and they think they're having a great time. And then like 2 days, 3 days later, when they're sober, they listen to like a tape and they're like, holy crap, this is terrible. Like that kind of thing, that is the realization that when you okay, that's right, this was all smoke and mirrors. Oh, that's right, they lie to get your money. Oh, that's right, they lie to get your attention. Oh, they're still doing all the same shit. Oh, it's worse than it was. Oh, it's okay. Well, then you kind of have a window to talk some sense into people, and you get really good conversations, especially in the sort of like the right or left spaces that hang out with third-party people or no-party people or whatever, you get really good talks and people come around, and then election season kicks back in, or midterm season kicks back in, and
most
that
important election of our lifetime.
multi-billion-dollar marketing machine rolls in. Most important election. This is the one. Life or death, do or die. You've got to do. And so people get sucked right back into it because the media demands it. And because people's livelihoods now are attached to this.
Yep.
So unless you've already cultivated a space where people understand that it's a show and they want genuine information that isn't feeding back into it, most of the people who were fence riding or in the middle or saw what was going are going to gravitate back into the circus because that's where all the action is. And that's where all the money is.
And they're convinced over and over year after year, even though they're on the fence, that, well, what else are you going to do? And they stand back and they go, okay, what else can I actually do? And they don't have the people like us going, here are your other, the idea of not voting to the person, even though they're realizing the scam, it doesn't add up to them because this is the only thing they know. It's like the cave. It's the shadows in the cave, man. We're going, there's a fucking cave entrance right there. There's a whole world out there. And they're going, what do you mean though? I don't see, this is all I can see. So it's a psychological, the cult analogy just can't leave my mind. It is people, the same with the two-party analogy, man. People are stuck in this system to the point to where they can't even fathom a difference. That's pretty wild to think about.
Courtney on Union of the Unwanted last night was telling a story about where she was basically like semi-circled in a clinic where people were chanting "obey" at her.
Right, she told you that. Yeah, that's wild, man. I think that. What else is that but cult activity?
That's great. It's not a cult. Not a cult. No, of course.
Obey.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation like that?
Not me, but it doesn't surprise me, man. I mean, what's the difference of that versus them just going like safe and effective, or, it's like, it's just one of these mantras that they have that they just trust the science. It's like, that's what it feels like. So it's, yeah. I mean, I can believe it. It's happening every day. It's wild. Dang, I've had a thought I was going to ask you about. I just forgot. Anyway, keep going. Damn it. There was something you said that was really interesting. I was going to expand on. But anyway, I forgot. So keep going. I didn't need to say that out loud.
By the way, Donald Trump, breaking news, is asked to move the case to Staten Island.
So what's up with that? He went of his own volition, which is exactly what his lawyer said. So all this hype was nothing. But has it been like he's driving there? What happened? Is he taken into custody? I haven't been following it this morning. I haven't gotten.
What I understand, it's just an arraignment. And I don't know, Steve, you're saying an arraignment, they won't fingerprint you or cuff you.
I mean,
I thought they did. I could be wrong.
Okay, so usually what happens is you get arrested.
Mm-hmm.
You get cuffed, you get printed, you get dressed out, you sit in jail, and then you go to court for your arraignment. Your arraignment is just a formal reading of charges.
Right.
That's all it is. You don't, so either you've already been
processed.
Yeah, you've already bring it back to the Dukes of Hazzard, cuffed and stuffed. That's already happened, and you've been, processed, ran through the system.
So the difference is that this is an example of the two-tier system. He is an elitist, wealthy person, so you don't get treated the same way. Because normally what happens is you get the charge, they bring you in, they process, they get it on the record, they tell you what you're, then they charge you, and then and then usually you don't go right to jail. Especially if you have a lawyer, you go out, and then eventually you might get arrested again if there's like something goes further. But he doesn't have to go through that process, right? This is, I understand.
Well, and also this is because he was the subject of a grand jury investigation. And it's a different process entirely. So he's responding to a formal list of charges being read from an indictment, not from.
What the charges are?
There's like 30 of them. They're ridiculous.
What law did he exactly break in campaign?
They're trying to get him with a bunch of different things. We could go pull it up, but again, I agree.
It's still confusing. It's because.
Well, this is the thing people need to understand is all this hype by all the pundits that wanted to make this like Posobiec shared a picture of all these cars driving like this is the end of America. We're never going to be the same after this. It's like, my God, man, Tony, nothing's happened yet, you know? And it's like, we don't know. But the point is an indictment is not, it's an accusation. Now, yes, arguably you need evidence, but really not. If you read into it, all you really need to do is convince the grand jury that there's enough to go forward. That's it. They don't even need actual evidence. They really just need a well put together story. And this is something lawyers will tell you. That doesn't mean it's invalid, but everyone saying this is suddenly like this arrest moment is they don't either understand or they're trying to manipulate people, right? So once this goes forward and they go further and the investigation comes out where they're like, okay, we're formally charging you with X, Y, and Z. You know, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
This is interesting to me right here. RSBN, which is a big Trump network, right side, whatever. YouTube imposes a 7-day ban on RSBN's channel the day before Trump's arraignment. Now, I would assume that this channel, when these things happen, these channels get a shit ton, a crazy amount of people following, watching, whatnot. Very interesting that they would take them down right before the arraignment and the indictment.
If that's what happened, and if that's why they were taken down, if it did happen. A couple of caveats there, right?
I'm sure if we found out the reason why, if we had a clear-cut reason for why, because YouTube never gives you a reason why, it would still be unjust, right? I've been calling for.
Oh, I'm not saying censorship. Yeah. No, not a
couple days ago, I was making a tweet, right, calling about like, isn't it time for YouTube to get audited? You know what I'm saying? Haven't they? I know we got no YouTube files, but what about these guys? They're still doing the same shit they've been doing for quite some time.
I agree, man. YouTube seemed to just get like, we'll see again. The question is whether I don't think Twitter's truly going through that process, but you're right to point out that it's weird that YouTube was like the first issue, if you want to look at it that way. And then we just like jumped over that. Yeah. There's the Assange documentary was just censored. I was actually looking in to try to get that playing local in Franklin. I just saw Horton pointing it out. It got censored on YouTube. It's just like, my God, they just never stopped. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, I could probably put you in touch with a couple of people to.
Yeah, please. I already submitted a thing and we'll see. Okay. But yeah, for sure. But oh shoot, what we're just saying. I just lost what we're just saying.
YouTube was the original.
Yes. Well, the idea that YouTube is, it was the channel, the RB. Yeah. The thing with we need to remember is, one, if they showed like a strike email, well, that's one thing. I didn't see it on that image, so maybe they showed them. But if they didn't, I would go, well, maybe this is just all hype to get more attention on the channel. We've seen that happen. But on top of that, people get censored for a lot of different reasons. You know what I mean? Like I'll put out a 4-hour video and then you get censored, and it's like, well, was it about this? Was it about that? Was it about this? Who knows? But I'm not justifying it in any way. I'm just saying, question whether or not it's all about some, like today there's a bad habit on all sides of the two-party paradigm to assume if it happens, that means this is true, or you know what I mean? And I don't know why they've been aware of that. They for a long time, where they know, well, we'll just create the Streisand effect with somebody we want, like a Tate, for example, and be like, oh, he's real because he got arrested. If that's, I don't know, you get into that weird story if you want, but it's just a weird, strange thing. Hey, buy my cryptocurrency now that I'm, out of jail or whatever. It's just something's fishy about that whole thing. But yeah, that's something that they do, so just consider that out there, but censorship shouldn't happen anyway. Bottom line.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting situation. YouTube seems to be just skating by, and every single time and everything they do. I mean, I remember when they took down the, what was it? Ukraine on Fire video off YouTube, right? When people, I mean, it's just like this, they do this shit all the time, and clearly states they're not allowed to pick winners and losers. They're protected from litigation, right? They are shielded.
Okay, so in terms of YouTube taking down the Ithaca documentary, and in terms of YouTube rightfully receiving the criticism that it does, at least around here, that YouTube has been a government entity for a decade now, like openly a government entity. They're an Alphabet subsidiary for the love of sweet Jeebus. the idea that they're anything but an arm of the National Security Council, the National Security Agency, that kind of stuff. They've got, former CEOs that sit on the National Security Council for Artificial Intelligence. What's her name? Wojcicki?
Susan Wojcicki. Yeah.
Yeah, Susan Wojcicki. I mean, aside from being like one of the few people to just openly give herself an award for free speech after censoring hundreds, if not thousands, of people with glee, like has massive ties to the national security complex. It's just on and on and on and on. YouTube is a government agency.
But that's not official, right? I mean, that's just because we understand how the system works. It's not, they're not coming out.
Well, I mean, it's direct parentage. It's direct lineage. There's no way to erase
they're still a private company, right?
Well, the right way to frame it is that if you have influence if the government if there's a subsidiary of clear government direct, what's the right way to frame it? Of, like a CIA shell company kind of a thing. Well, you could argue they're still an independent company, but are we going to pretend that they're not influenced by their parent? That's obviously they are. So whether we want to name that a government entity or just influenced by it, it's the same point in my mind.
It's the public-private partnership. If
exactly,
if nothing at its that's the simplest level, it's the public-private partnership. But there's a
right there.
Yeah, and there's just kind of an extra, little segment in the middle there that is direct influence by that public with an agenda sphere, and that agenda is, let's make sure that the stuff that runs counter to narrative management. It was honestly, it was like the Assange related topics way back in the day, and then also like flat earth and everything else that Alex Jones was talking about that were the first things that were getting like 2015, 2014.
Really?
Oh yeah, they went after
it back then though. It doesn't even make sense because it's it seems like because it's same thing people point out in the past is there was a time when they didn't censor like 9/11 True. They just pretended like, look at these crazy weirdos. And then when people started going, well, these crazy weirdos are making a lot of sense. They go, oh, well, now they're dangerous. Now they're spreading misinformation. So it's an interesting choice. Why do you think that was happening back then? Like, why would they see flat Earth as a threat? So I know what flat Earthers are going to say. Maybe they're right.
Yeah. I think it has a lot more to do with the comment sections in a lot of the videos. I think it has a lot to do with the intensity and I guess, I don't know, extracurricular editorializing that look, I'm trying to be generous, man. I got love for a lot of these people. Okay.
Hey, question everything. That might absolutely, but question, go ahead.
But yeah,
it's a simulation.
There was some extracurricular editorializing that may have ran afoul of legitimate what do you call them, hate speech laws. So I mean, there's a little bit of content there that's questionable in general, but that's what BitChutes for. And so
the illusion of the hate speech laws that don't exist, right? Yeah.
But I mean, so I think that had more to do with it than the actual discussions about the relative shape of the earth or its position under the firmament.
Yeah,
as you do.
There's so many things in all these conversations that are so fascinating. I love getting into these conversations about, things that are supposed to be like ridiculous or off limits or whatever. And what's fascinating to me is that there are always things like a long time ago. I think I've told you this. I did a whole show like before the daily wrap up. I just did like this focus on that. It was called the Flat Earth Theory, an exercise in keeping an open mind. Right. And I did this for a reason. I said, look, anyone that comes into any conversation with a preconceived idea, you're going to find what you're looking for, right? If you come in going, this is dumb and fake, but I'll look at it. What do you think you're going to find, right? But so you come into any conversation with an open mind and go through the data points and really objectively look at it. That's the only way to do it, right? My point was I went through all this. I, brought in all this information for, there was a long point. I did like a week. I went through all this stuff, which to them, they're going to last not enough time. But my point was that I came to the conclusion that I personally don't think that, it's flat, right? That seems like a stretch to me. But you look through the information as a whole, you'll find a lot of things in there that are like, that doesn't make sense. And nobody's explained that. Doesn't mean that equals flat. Sort of like the idea you could prove, in my opinion, that we clearly, when they said we did not go to the moon. Does that mean we didn't? I can't say that. Does that mean we don't have the capability? I don't think so. But you can prove that today that we did. They lied to us about what happened there. And anybody honest can make that obvious, blatant argument. There's things that scientifically just don't hold up today, right? So the point is, though, what actually happened there? To jump to the conclusion that it's what they think, well, that's just an assumption, right? But there's like the whole Antarctica overlap. There is something very weird that happened. The Admiral Byrd and the last, nobody's allowed to like fly over. There's something very weird going on there. Now, is it a military installation and that's a cover story? I don't know. But
all these countries that hate each other are still honoring the Antarctica Treaty.
Man. And so really, this is the game that I think gets played today everywhere, that they give us this hyperbolic narrative. Like we could talk about the virus, no virus, or the, graphene or the 9/11, because there's always something that gets inserted that's like partial truth that covers a real truth. And that's what I thought about graphene. That's what I think about a lot of these things. I think there's something to these stories, and they get this weird overlap that makes people push away from it, including people like us, like the virus terrain theory, that people are coming at you so aggressively that it makes you go like, I don't even want to look at this anymore. And it's like, that's not intentional, right? But it's like, it drives you in that direction. I think that's part of it, man.
I couldn't agree more. And the more that I see people hyper focused on trying to make one particular thing the sum total of what defines whether or not you're one of them, it's like, okay, man, I get that this is your thing. I do. And I respect that it's your thing, but I don't think that you are just that. I'm never going to assume that the sum total of you is contained within this one subject. Mm-hmm. So if you could extend me the same courtesy, I would appreciate it. Exactly. And if you can't do that, then we don't really have anywhere else that we can go. And
right.
And then
framed online in conversations as if like we're whining about how we're being attacked. It's like, my God, you can't even represent our criticism correctly. It's like we're just, the argument is if you want to inform people about your position, screaming they're ridiculous liars for shilling for the government, even if that may be true, you're not going to reach the people that aren't, right? You are going to scream them away from yourself. And that's arguably what that's meant to do. Maybe they don't know that, it's frustrating, but a lot of these conversations people should look into, whether we're talking about Ukraine, COVID, come at it from an objective perspective, go look at the moon landing. Right. Go look at the story. Don't stand here and go, oh, here we go. Black helicopters and tinfoil. All the things you're supposed to say. Stand back and look at the facts and walk away laughing, because you're going to see how silly the arguments are. Like, oh, yep, here's our green telephone that we're calling the moon on in real time. Right. We can't do that today, guys. It's silly to think that that's what happened. So something was behind that story. I don't know what that something is, but they lied to us, right? That's how
I do a radio show frequently out of Washington, D.C., the Critical Hour with Garland Nixon, Dr. Wilmer Leon. You've probably been, it's fun as hell. And I have to go outside of my apartment and like stand halfway in the parking lot to do that show, because my phone won't allow for me through whatever pass-through system that they're using at the radio station to sit here and have that phone call. But you can call the moon in 1969 and there's no delay.
Right. And remember that the phone we have today, they've made this point many times, that has more technological power than the thing that they used to send people to the moon all the way back then. Right. I mean, so now you still can't, it's like, look, maybe there's something more that explains it that I don't know. Maybe they had the technology then and we were lied to. My point is, we don't know. But the idea that we're still taking this absurd narrative at face value, despite the 100 different things that have been caught, the altering of the imagery, like these have been proven. My argument is not to say that that's not capable or possible, or maybe they did and they hid something. Maybe they found something and then faked the whole story. The point is we were lied to. Anyway, too much on that point. Overall, bringing it back to today, it's like, why can't we see that they do this? You know, like for real stories, like they use the truth to scare us away. That's fucking everywhere, man. It's like every story I could think about right now. Like for instance, oh, good, Pasta. Were you gonna say something?
No. I was just about to ask Steve. I know he had a plan to talk about 15-minute cities. I think with Ryan, and it's 11 o'clock. So
yeah,
I don't know if there's anything you want.
I'll talk forever.
Yeah. We have a guest in about a half hour, so it's perfect.
I do, and we can. I do real quick want to bring up this week's Marmot related art from Angela.
The Marmotist?
Our Marmot. So okay, we've joked on the show that you've never seen Janet Yellen and Fauci in the same room at the same time.
Okay.
Right? You maybe could they be the same person? But this is so multi-layered. I love the depths in the artwork here.
My name is Science.
Yeah, hello, my name is Science. And then Janet Yellen removing the "Hello, my name is Science" coat to reveal her true form. That's her Fauci mask.
I love CBDC.
Right. I love CBDC. You rock.
That's funny.
You rock. And I'm not gonna lie, Angela, it's creeping me out a little bit because she's done like 2 or 3 pieces of what could now really be honestly considered precognitive art.
How exactly do you mean that?
Well, okay. In terms of like art that it really kind of looks like it depicts a future event.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the Coos Party album cover, party music album cover was the Twin Towers blowing up, but it was Boots with a bass effects pedal as the detonator.
Okay.
In front. And it was released in May of 2001. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Angela has done she did a piece called Rainbows versus Nazis, and it was two marmots, and one was like a trans rights marmot, and the other was like a fake nut. They both had like little Fed patches on them, and then we had that. There was the event where Posey Parker got like mobbed. Alex Stein gets basically jumped. Billboard Chris, all that kind of stuff. That happened basically right after she put out that picture. There was another one that was like oddly
predicting the future.
Yeah.
That's funny. I love. I mean, I love stuff like this because it's as always the comedy angle, or just maybe just satire. It has a way of reaching people when they don't realize it. It's always powerful. That's like the real understanding of memetics memes and how influential that truly is. The fact that they focus on a Russian meme as if that changed everything. It's like they clearly see the influential nature of meme. Not that actually happened, by the way. I think that's a complete garbage story, but that they know, right? They know how powerful a meme can swing around the world before they can start. And the message gets there. Even if it's something that they don't agree with, people can laugh at the humor about it. Same with comedy. It's powerful. Yeah. That's why Ryan Long, for example, he reaches a lot of people, man.
I gotta tell you, man, go to that show. go to that show. I'm not. Yeah, it's comedy clubs or fight clubs. You're not really supposed to talk about what happened there. You're supposed to encourage other people to see it. It's like, dude, you can't walk around doing other people's jokes, especially if they're guests on the show. Dude, what do I do? Fuck.
It's
so please go see the show and
comedy's so funny. It's like this own weird, like dark underworld, like the comedian, like it's just funny the way that the comedy circles are framed by other comedians. And it's like, it's just funny.
My neighbor Teal, who does Blunt Force. By the way, there is a Blunt Force Wisdom this evening, nice. And every Tuesday. And when you don't have like a whole 8 hours worth of shows to put out immediately after you leave this one, you'd come through some week, man. But by all means.
Wait a second. You want to go on that show? I heard, huh?
What, on Blunt Force?
Yeah,
totally. Yeah,
I totally want to watch that show.
Yeah,
I totally want to watch that show.
But
that would be let me know. I'm getting the popcorn out for that one.
Teal went with us to Teal went with me, and then Sugar. So it was like the Blunt Force Wisdom team got to go to the Ryan Long show. And dude, this woman was in tears, like in legitimate tears, multiple times. Laughing. And she is, and she has a very, very dark sense of humor. Like it doesn't, silly, okay, but then there's like a giant chasm between what will make her laugh and holy crap, dude. Holy crap.
Well, some people just take comment, like, especially today with all the, I mean, it's this overcompensation, and I think it's rightly so. Like there's this long time frame where so many of these topics were just ignored, like, whether we're talking about like, the Me Too movement or all these different things. There was a time where comedy was like, it didn't seem like anybody cared all that much. Like we acknowledged that it was comedy, like it's a joke. You can go extreme, but it's funny. There's a line, but whatever. Like it's just that just got blown out of the water now. So I feel like that's slowly starting to kind of come back a little bit. Where now I think we just talked about this, Steve. Like where comedy's now kind of like getting, people are afraid to stand up and say the wrong thing, even in comedy, which was kind of lame, But I'm glad to see that it's coming back. We need that humor side of this. We need to be able to make fun of ourselves. There
was about a 10-year period where it was like legitimately like PC before there was, the woke shit or any of that. It was just there was like the PC police or whatever that were running around telling you what was and wasn't funny. And that started like 2003, 2005, something like that. About a decade of that crap. And then it was Me Too. And Me Too really like kind of put, kick the door of self-policing content in. And then because you could then be Me Too'd through speech, you could feel assaulted by hearing words at a comedy show,
which is ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's why Tim Dillon's of the world came out and just went full blow over. Right. I love that. He was in that little moment there where he came out and was like, I loved it. He said he had that really viral moment on stage where he was just like yelling at the crowd and they were like, boo. It's hilarious. To actual comedy lovers, it was the best. That's why it went viral, because it's like, look at him giving it to his own crowd.
Where he's going off on you, we work sons of yeah.
We work energy here. It's hilarious because who does that to their own crowd? You know what I mean? It's because he committed to it. It's funny and he knew it.
I saw, and then we can get into the San Francisco thing, but I did real quick. The dude who does Boys Cast with Ryan Long, Danny Polishchuk, he would tweet it out like the other week or something like that. He was like, "Man, I got the comedy yips."
The comedy yips?
Yeah. You know what the yips are? Pasta knows what the yips are. Yeah, it's when a batter is in a slump.
Okay.
And like you're just not hitting. You got a case of the yips. You're not in the zone. I don't know. I figured it was just some East Coast weird shit. Honestly, it sounded like I don't know. I figured it was a colloquialism. I did. At any rate, his point was you haven't been able to destroy a heckler on stage in like the last several times I've been on.
I love it.
But if you ever want to see pure genius at work, Sam Tripoli taking out a heckler and then bringing the entire rest of the room in on taking out the heckler.
I love it.
Oh, it's
I've never seen
magic. Absolute magic. There's that. I guess Metzger.
Okay.
Kurt. Really good. Yeah, really good at clearing, the knocking down a heckler, a pegger 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you can top Bill Hicks screaming on his belly on stage into the microphone. Hitler had the right idea. He was just an underachiever. But the experiment failed.
You see what I mean? Like, so do we really going to pretend that he's saying that because he means that? Like everybody knows he's doing it for outrage. You know, he's doing it to push the boundaries. But today, it doesn't even matter, right? Today, it's like you're not even allowed to say it, even though we know you don't mean it. Like, that's the broken nature of this. Like, that's the words are violence agenda, right? That's hilarious to me. Not because we agree with what he's saying, but because we know people out there are going, "Oh no," clutching their pearls, going, "You can't say that," and I think that's hilarious.
In fairness, the person he was yelling it at had yelled at him, "Play Freebird," at Bill Hicks's comedy show. So he was like, well, fuck it. The human experiment failed. In this moment, proof positive right here. Holy shit. Come on, giant meteor. Hitler had the right idea. He was just an underachiever. This fuck yelling Freebird at my show. Yeah.
I can't understand I can't understand the mentality, this narcissistic kind of mentality of trying to make the show about yourself as a heckler when you go to a comedy show. It's
Pasta. How many fucking idiots did we sit there and watch get escorted out right when people first started to come back out after the lockdowns when we got here?
Decent amount, yeah.
I mean, it was like every week that we went to go see some comedy, there was somebody being like just totally out of pocket, didn't know how to behave anymore.
Yeah. And, and I thought it was more about like, where we are as society today as individuals, rather than just this fact that this is lockdown. The lockdown just kind of made that kind of mentality stew up some more. So when they got out in public, it just really came out. We saw several times at comedy shows. It's just like our friend Brett. Sometimes he would just take it and turn it around. That last dude, he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but go ahead. And the dude's like, take it in. He's like, I don't know, but and everybody was laughing at him. So there's an art form you can see these comedians they have when they do get heckled, how they can either run with it, turn it against them, or there was these two girls that Brett was just, all right, ladies, just get the hell out. Just you're drunk, you're wasted. Oh, now I'm the bad guy for asking you.
One of them fell out of her chair.
She fell down in the back and fell over chairs on the way out too. It was.
But you make a great point though, Pastas. It's a societal, like we need to realize. I mean, there's always been hecklers, but I think it's a risky move. Everybody knows that you're going to stand up and heckle. You damn well better be to hold your own, and you take it if you. But today, you're right. I think we're this kind of energy they have around, like protesting, or I'm gonna shake your can of bolts and not allow them to talk. It's more indicative. You said about like a
narcissistic individual thing.
It's about me and my ideas, and you're not allowed to say these things. Like it's interesting, and I think it's got. I'd like to find out from last thing from comics about whether or not that's increased. That'd be interesting to find out. Go ahead, Pastor.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, like, if you just look at the reasons why people protest nowadays, it has to be something that when I was just looking at some of these protests, I believe it was in South Carolina. It was a bunch of students. They wanted gun reform, and they got out there and they were marching and stuff. And I was like, man, the things they can like internalize and actually protest about in this fucking country are just not even on the minds of people in other countries. And, it's just like a different, we have a weird different society that's just so
propaganda.
It just breeds and feeds narcissism. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
what do you need? What's okay with you? Who gives a fuck about society? What do you need? What about, let's address your feelings.
Well, here's I agree. Here's an extension of that though. These kids have been convinced that their personal perspectives are societal needs. That's crazy to think about right there, right? So you've turned narcissism into altruism. Like, I mean, think about that. We're living in fucking Orwell's nightmare. I mean, it's inverse of reality, man. Everywhere you look. That's an interesting point, man. That's kind of scary.
It's a great point you just made, brother.
Well, that's essentially your point, man. I mean, I think what we need to see is that it's like Caitlin Johnstone has always made this point that the extension, like the extreme of what we're doing right now is essentially breaking your mind. We're living through trauma-based mind control, essentially, right? We are being broken and cognitive dissonance, and people are literally snapping, and then they blame us for trying to inform them about what's being done to them, as opposed to the actual radicalization.
Yeah, and when we say that's a continuation of the MK Ultra program, and they just fine-tuned it and realized that you could get a wider swath of subjects if you did it slowly over time, and then increased the amount of traumas that people are experiencing to the point to where you're forcing a break.
Mm-hmm.
then then we get called, we call whatever we get called for it.
Yep.
But there's I guess I guess we'll this is fun and I want to keep doing this, but I want to get you guys' ideas and opinions about this. So San Francisco has kind of been long planned to be one of the cities of the future. And it looks like the only way that they're going to be able to do it is if they implode it first. And they've made it so that it's virtually impossible to be there. And let's jump into the doom loop a little bit.
When you say impossible, you just mean because of all the like homelessness and that kind of stuff, or because of this new thing?
Well, okay, there's a number of different things. First of all, it's expensive as shit. So, I mean, even the people who work there can't afford to live there or live anywhere outside of it, really. I mean, that's part of why Oakland got overly gentrified, is because people were getting priced out of what used to be relatively affordable neighborhoods in San Francisco. And they were still working in the city, but they were living in shittier neighborhoods in Oakland where they could afford it. And then the next thing you know, there's a Whole Foods. And the next thing you know, there's a competing coffee shop. And then the next thing you know, you're overran by Karens with little yappy dogs. And now your fucking used to be cool neighborhood has an HOA and everything sucks.
Yeah. That San Francisco is like uber expensive when people were selling their houses in San Francisco and relocating to Venice Beach, buying a house and still having money left over in the bank to do nothing. That's what my last time that I was working in the restaurant business, I spent a little time down there. What's that street called? It's like the Haight-Ashbury of Venice. I forgot. There's this one particular street and all these little restaurants are on there and stuff. And people were literally selling their house in San Francisco, relocating to Venice and still having cheese left in the bank. That's how pricey it is.
Okay, so this is according to the San Francisco the Chronicle. Yeah. Interconnected forces trap the city in economic freefall. Workers remain primarily remote. Office space sits empty. There's a ding. Businesses shutter. Mass transit sharply reduced or even bankrupt, making it even harder for low and middle wage workers who enable restaurants and small businesses to operate, causing major budget shortfalls from declining tax revenue that imperil numerous city services, also nervous, trigger mass layoffs of city workers and shred the social safety net, all of which causes more people to leave. So people that aren't priced out get kind of sucked into this never-ending doom loop scenario where they're still forcing more and more money into the situation that can't solve itself because there's now nobody but the homeless and the uber wealthy that live there. And so you would have to then throw more money at the problem to incentivize people to come back in, including more businesses which already left. And then you'd still have to get all of those people to comply with all of the ridiculous regulations that you have as, the world's most super progressive city. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask. So this is from I guess the premise was the 15-minute city conversation, right? So this is the government doing, like, my question would be if this wasn't the government, which is damn near seems like everything seems to be tied back today, but if this was just like the natural progression of this and there's companies coming in and doing this, I know that people are in positions today where it's near impossible for them just to move and change locations and so on. But if it's not the government doing it, and I believe it probably is, it's an interesting question of whether or not that is wrong or just the natural evolution of something. And that's how these things go. Change happens. But if the government is where I have an issue with, if they're the ones doing this for another agenda and driving people out, then that would be a problem for me. So
the vast majority of the anti-human policies and definitely the small business, medium business policies started when Gavin Newsom got in.
Right. So there you
go. I mean, and it's as mayor of San Francisco. Okay, and it's a direct line between Gavin Newsom as mayor of San Francisco and Gavin Newsom as governor of California, making statewide policies that directly impact the way that San Francisco and Oakland and the Bay Area in general do business.
Yeah.
That are if not, no such thing as a soul factor in this, but they are a majority stakeholder in this, 100%. And all of it, of course, could have been avoided. But now what they're doing, and this is why I'm saying there's a 15-minute city tie-in with it. Now what they're doing is they're saying, oh, well, all of these empty office buildings. Oh, well, let's just throw them into, let's just convert it into housing. And then if we want to, well, I guess the bottom couple of floors or whatever, that could just be the actual facility, and they could all just sort of work in where they live. And won't it be great? There is a policy research organization and the local chapter of the Urban Land Institute did over 10,000 housing units be created within the shells of older office buildings, but only if the city primes the pump by lowering fees and affordable housing requirements. Sure, you're going to have to pay all of the money out to convert it, bring it up to code, especially San Francisco city of then state of California code. Sure, but you're also somehow going to make it affordable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm 100% with you on the concern about, all of these things have they all seem to drive in the same direction of the larger agenda that they're all clearly driving toward, right? So I'm obviously concerned about what the motives are behind why this is being done, but just for fun, so what would be the alternative? Right. So I often worry whether there are just things that are happening that, I don't really personally see almost anything as benign these days. I think there's always some kind of an agenda behind something. Call me a pessimist, call me jaded. I probably am. But at the same time, could it be that this is just taking advantage of a situation that is because of what they're doing? Like, why would it be bad? I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Trust me, I'm right in line with where your mind's at. Why would it be bad to take advantage of empty office space to create more homes for people should they want to be there? I guess what my point I'm getting at is the moment it becomes where that's like a driven thing, a necessary thing, or 15-minute cities, or you have to take one of these places, that kind of thing. That's what gets me most concerned. If it's always choice, then I kind of don't, it seems like I'm not worried about it yet. But what would you say to that, just for devil's advocate?
Well, I would say right now there's a number of conditions that you have to agree to before you move to San Francisco in the first place. And one of them is definitely like, do I want to live in a city that has human feces all over the sidewalk on my way to work? Do I want to live in a place where, I swear to God, they were trying to build a restaurant. It's on hold, but this is just the general vibe of the city right now. There was a tech billionaire who wanted to build in the financial district, like right over where it is sort of an open sewer and just kind of a junkie gallery. He wanted to build a restaurant that they had a limited membership of like 1,000 people that could buy in via NFTs. And it was going to be like super high end dining. And you could literally look down on the people below you, as I'm not kidding. So that's the vibe of the city right there. That's kind of what you're agreeing to move into in the first place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't, but yeah, if it was just something where, through the natural course of events, or through, let's say you didn't have agriculture down and you fucked up, and it's going to be a decade or so before you can really grow anything there. You've got to move, relocate. If it's a natural ebb and flow kind of thing, I have no problem with it. I have no problem with businesses, hanging out their shingle. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then you got somebody else's name on your shirt for a while. I got no problem with that.
Yeah.
But what this is it seems like directed collapse on top of the fact that they've had the pilot smart city right outside of San Jose for a decade now in Cupertino, California. that's just been sort of waiting to be the model. And this is a Bill Gates and Apple combined project in the city of Cupertino.
See, that's where I get concerned, and that's the logical conclusion I think is smart. Like, it's important though to make that point though, is that we got to be careful that we're not just kind of sweeping in too much. But I agree with you, because we can already see the whole 15-minute city thing in the UK and elsewhere in the United States as well, very clearly materializing. Like, there's videos now coming out where people are, the illusion is becoming clear, where they're going, oh, well, you see the sign? You're not allowed to go. And the woman's like, you probably saw the video, right? Where she's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm trying to go to work. And it comes to the point where she goes, fine, what do I get? A fine? Okay, move. I'll take the fine. And they're like, oh, but you can't though. The sign says you can't. Don't you care about the planet? And she's like, you just told me I had a choice. The choice is the illusion. They're like, well, no, though. You're not supposed to take the fine. You're supposed to say no and go the other way. It just clear. And this is some random guy just enforcing it with his green hair. It's like this very weird development. The point is that these people are taking it to this extreme, where you're not allowed to then have that other choice. And I think that's where this goes, is that we're being, I mean, look, you can go back to Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, like, the idea of what they're trying to accomplish with this is right on the surface. So all that being said, I'm with you, man. I think that this is a means to an end, especially happening in California. Newsom is one of the most concerning people in all of politics, as far as I'm concerned.
And they, for me, that whole recall was all about, once again, this kind of Trump thing about villainizing him and lifting him up after he won. I mean, he came right out of the gate and was, just chomping at the bit to talk about these COVID protocols. They didn't just say yes to Gavin Newsom. They said yes to protecting our children, yes to protecting our society. Like, he was just out of the gate talking about what was to be the plan, pushing forth with all these laws in California. And we know there were so many of them, including laws that said a 14-year-old can consent to the shot without the permission of his parents, and they would hide that information. So, those things are concerning. But, I just want to kind of harp on for a second what you were just talking about there, Ryan, because I think it's a certain quagmire that we kind of face. What's so bad about it when you're talking about these situations, right? We're talking about housing and possibly getting people who are homeless into situations, maybe, but yet, the design, we understand what's going on behind the scenes and what they're trying to accomplish. I see these same type of hurdles taking place when we're trying to have a conversation about climate change or global warming or whatnot. It's like, okay, look at these ESGs. These ESGs really aren't meant to be to save the planet. They're meant to be a dark horse or a Trojan horse, to go on in there and have the big companies, the big farms, swoop up the small farms. So then we get into the situation where we can't even have a conversation on what's best and what's healthy for the planet, because anytime you might try to talk about that, they're like, here you are, you're trying to usher in the fourth industrial revolution by hiding behind green technologies or green policies. So this is something that I think we have a hard time facing, because so many times they weaponize these situations in which it's just a Trojan horse.
Well, this is the point we were making before. It's the same point, right? That ultimately it's the whole thing, the word sustainable, right? The same game where it's become so convoluted that they've turned the real thing into a dirty word, whereas they're not even fighting for the real thing, right? The ESG, like your point is, so climate change is politicized. I personally think the whole carbon angle is a complete scam. Regardless of that, we are ruining the planet. Those things can exist in the same conversation, right? The military is the biggest polluter on the planet. For those out there screaming China, guys, do your research and realize that the U.S. military all around the world and in the United States is the biggest polluter on the planet. Period. Right? Yep. China's also very terrible, right? But it's very clear who's doing the most polluting. The point is, all that's having a terrible effect. All the masks, all the plastics, all the glyphosate, all of the dioxins and PFAS and all this stuff. We are ruining ourselves, including our bodies. But that does not translate, in my mind, into some climate change escalation argument. That's garbage. But the game ends up getting, well, the point is we allow the planet to keep getting destroyed because people, like your point is, people who think we're pointing at climate change, when we say that, ignore it all. Right? When we're in the reality, it's somewhere in the middle. That's the two-party paradigm, always stopping us from achieving some kind of change. Right? Absolutely. That's what it is. And the ESG thing is
illusion. I still love saying it, but we need a T-shirt for that one. Are you going to hang around? Our guest is here, or do you have to take off?
I do. I'll say hi real quick, but I do have to go. I've got a meeting in about 20 minutes. So
okay,
I'll say hi for a second.
Let's introduce our guest. She is here today. Her name is Jalissa Danielle. I thought it was great to get a guest on that sometimes rocks it on TMZ, but it also can be seen on InfoWars. I thought that was one of the greatest combinations in the world. Also, the fact that she's in the horoscope, and I wanted to just destroy and bother Steve, who calls it metaphysical racism, but she's also into that. But more importantly, when I saw her Twitter, I thought, what an amazing heart, what an amazing person she is. Just yesterday, she put up this video, and I didn't get a chance to finish my speech against the Rage Against the War Machine. I wanted to end it by talking about the fact that when you see these videos out there where people citizens within our own society fighting each other, beating each other up, and they kind of publicize this and they put this everywhere. To me, that hurts so much to see our citizens, our neighbors go at each other's throats. It makes me think that the ruling class is just laughing at us. But when we see these beautiful videos where the one that Jalissa just pointed up, that, there's a fruit vendor that has been selling fruit in front of Disneyland for God knows how long, never actually went into Disneyland. And they made it possible to give this person this experience to come on in, like, hey, let's just sell all your fruit and take you in there and let you feel what it's like to be a human again, not just a vessel of the state. So here with us today, Jalissa Danielle, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And by the way, this is Ryan Cristian from The Last American Vagabond. Steve, my co-host here from AM Wake Up and Slow News Day, and I am Pasta. Great to finally meet you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about, this kind of crazy combination I talked about. TMZ and InfoWars. How does that happen?
I don't know. I was an educator for 14 years, and throughout that time I was working in music and festivals and concerts and things like that. And I don't know how they came across my Twitter, but they messaged me on Twitter, and I don't speak highly of them, and I don't post things that people like to hear. So I'm not sure why. Part of me thinks that maybe someone within that organization is starting to lean a little bit right, and they want to bring someone on to kind of see if they can push the agenda a little bit.
We're talking about TMZ, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, because they keep asking me to come on. It's like my 5th or 6th time going on there. And as far as InfoWars, one of the producers found me on Twitter because I had posted a bumper sticker that I saw just on Twitter. I was like, somebody was like something about the media is, a disease or something like that. And I was like, yeah. And then they saw it and contacted me, and then just took off from there.
Anybody got any questions? I can keep rolling.
Well, I'm gonna have to break off.
I was gonna say, let's
nice to meet you and
enjoy
your guys' conversation, and congratulations on your success. It's nice to see people continuing to grow. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, she just quit her other job, so she's like, that's why we got her here now. So it's like real success.
That's outstanding. That's a really great moment right there. I remember when that, I took the leap of faith, was scared to do this full time, and it's it's a great moment to realize that you got the support. So congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Ryan, what do you got going on? Anything special we need to know about?
I got 2 interviews to put up today, and then I'm going to be doing a show most likely. But yeah, we got a lot of good stuff coming your way. I'll give a shout out while I'm here to the Rebels with a Cause for Courtney and Scott's event coming up. That's it's going to be pretty great. So make sure you guys check that out. I think you guys, the links are. I'll throw a link to you guys. You guys can share it. So.
Oh, absolutely. We share it all the time, brother. Thank you so much,
all right,
Ryan.
Have a good one. See you next week.
Yeah.
Take care, buddy.
At that event, Owen Schroer's speaking too as well, and Jalissa had an interview with Owen not too long ago, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did. I know. So I was really, everything was like, whoa, because I looked him up and I saw the press about him, and I was like, I like this. It's controversial.